It's a thrill to be back at Fenwick. You know why she's got a crutch? Because she has a withered leg. So I saw her 3 different times, and I only cried 3 times. And I still cry thinking about her. So Peter, Paul, and Mary, song in 1963, you know, on this Operation Hastings, and all of a sudden these flares start falling through the sky. And I'm like, and I say to the guy next to me, "What's that? What's going on?" And before he could answer me, there's a growl, a roar. And then the guy said, finally it quiets down. The guy said, "It's Puff the Magic Dragon." And it's true, you know. And the rounds, they're Gatling guns. You guys know what the Gatling guns are from the olden days. So these planes, they got them configured so they're million candle power flares falling out of the planes and the Gatling guns. And they can saturate a football field in like 60 seconds. So you can be hiding, but you're dead. You know, it just saturates the whole place. So we had Peter, Paul, and Mary, Puff the Magic Dragon. Good. So that was a wonderful question, because actually the last segment of my talk is entitled Back to the World. And my first book, Fire Mission, the subtitle is The World of Nam. So the thing that was totally different was Vietnam. So coming back here was wonderful, but going to Vietnam was quite a surprise, which we will talk about. As you can see from these guys. Can you see those guys okay? Okay. So that's actually in Angkor Wat, Cambodia, about 5 years ago. So I told you about my ship sailed from Long Beach, California to Okinawa, and then down to Taran Bay. Before you hit the beach or land in the Marines, you get a briefing. You are about to tumble down the rabbit hole. This place is amazing. The things they carried, you know, in the book you guys are reading. So one of the things I carried, I bought myself a small camera when I was in Okinawa, and that's the first picture I took in Vietnam. This is a classic. I love that one. So we were out on an operation. The things they carried, she's got to be carrying at least 100 pounds of rice there, for sure. And she did not acknowledge our existence. It's like she was in one plane and we were in another plane, and we didn't bother her. There were like 100 Marines there, and we're all, you know, guys with their rifles, and we just let her go by. But she didn't look at us. It was like we don't exist and she doesn't exist. So that's my first home in Da Nang in Vietnam, was the North Fort. So anyhow, this is a fort that was definitely there during World War II. And it was kerosene lamps, no electricity. That was the view from the fort looking west. And that goes all the way out to that Ba Na mountain I was telling you about. And that shows you how beautiful and primitive. Those are rice paddies where you can see the water reflecting, the rice paddies. This is one of the stars of the show, Juan. So I befriended Juan and Tuk. So Juan was a little kid in the village, in one of the hamlets, and she's lived in the Buddhist hamlet, and Tuk was Catholic. So she and and she's carrying a box I got for Christmas. So this is around Christmas time. She's got no shoes on. None of the girls, none of the women wore shoes. You can see the kids back here with the conical hats. They got the black pajamas on. So that's how everybody dressed. My other friend, Tuk, ran the store, okay? She was in charge of this store. She sold Coca-Cola. This was the fancy means of transportation for most people, a bike, or you could walk. Another little kid with the black pajamas, no shoes. That's Foom. She was one of the translators for the medical mission team, which we'll talk about later. That's the Catholic Church a half a mile south of the fort. And that was my landmark for finding my friends, which is part of the story here. When I found that, I knew I made it, but it took several days to find it. So Phum went to the university in Da Nang. That's Sister Amy. So the Marines spent a lot of time with the children. We helped the children. We had a platoon. So there's 3 platoons in a company. So one platoon was at the fort. This platoon was at the orphanage up on a hill. Then there was one further south. So Amy was Vietnamese, obviously, but I took 2 years of French here, in addition to 2 years of Latin. And I took 2 years of French in Vietnam, or in Annapolis. So I could communicate with her in French, which was really cool, which I never thought my French lessons would work or be a factor when I was carrying a rifle. Okay, now a few war stories. So this is the artillery battery, and you guys saw where it was. It's about a mile toward Da Nang from the fort. So we were attacked at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's what our cannons looked like. We had 6 105 howitzers, they're called. There's 3 guys, working on it, doing the numbers, and then a couple of guys that load the shells, take turns loading the shells. So we got hit by a Viet Cong sapper team, and they blew up 2 of the cannons with satchel charges, which are explosives in a bag that they flip over, and they were well trained. They did their homework, okay? Because a month later, they investigate all these attacks. A month later, they found our battery position up in the mountains, like a replica. So they did their homework. One of the mistakes they made is they were on drugs. So they're on drugs, but they did their homework. And most of them got killed, but 5 Marines got killed too, which was bad. They had these beautiful assault rifles called Kalashnikovs. Have you ever heard of them? They're from Russia, the Russian. And so they're AK-47s. So we recovered 7 of them. I wish I had one. They'd be worth a lot of money just to have as a souvenir. Here's a rocket launcher. So the things they carried, right? The bad guys carried stuff too, the Viet Cong. They didn't wear any clothes. They had a pair of gym shorts on, no shirts, no shoes, no hats, no nothing. Wire cutters, Chi-Com grenades. That's one of my favorite pictures. That is totally cool. All right. The Marines fought the good fight. So that's early in the morning. So this attack was at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I got his comment on, his little quote on the back cover of The Elephant Smiled. He's a big, tough dude. We had some really tough guys. Out of the exec pit, and I was going along slowly, I tripped and fell. I tripped on a body, and I had my pistol and I put it in the guy's face, but said shot him. So we get up to Quan Tri, it's called. It's up near the border, and I'm there a few hours. Obviously, I have no clue where I am, and a sergeant comes over and says, "Are you Lieutenant Gorman?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "They want to see you at the operations tent." I'm like, "Okay, where is it? You got to go to this meeting." He said, "It's like 3 miles away." I'm like, I don't even know where I am. And they said, the guy points and he says, "That's for you." They sent a helicopter to get me, which is pretty cool. So myself and another first lieutenant got on the helicopter and they flew us to the meeting. And we're preparing for, Hastings is already going on, but we're like the next batch of guys that came in. So I go to this meeting and it's like, "Who are you?" "Okay, stand over there for a while." So, "Okay, Gorman, come here." So I go up there and this guy's got maps. And he's handing me the maps, but I know he's not a Marine. He's a guy about 40 years old. He doesn't have a uniform on. He's got, some kind of dungaree stuff on. He's with the CIA. He's given us maps. And it's guard this with your life. Speaking of homework, one of the nights we were out in the jungle, we were warned and told where we're going to be going, the Viet Cong have, like, they pop up out of tunnels. So you don't know what's going to, you know, where they are or anything at night, obviously. So when we got to our position, after a rough day, the word was you got to dig a foxhole. And I'm going to do my homework. And I sat down, I got the maps out, and I figured out exactly where we were. And of course, there's no GPS, so you got to figure it out yourself. That night, I took the first watch. I said, you guys sleep, and I'll do the first watch. So just before midnight, it got really eerie and really quiet, and you could feel the sweat trickling down your back. And I heard some friction, some metal on metal. And I'm like, you know, and you're thinking faster than I'm talking here, but it was rounds sliding down a mortar tube. And so we were going to get mortared. I hopped in the hole, got a flashlight, grabbed my map, and called in a fire mission. Because in a fire mission, and 3 or 4 or 5 minutes later, the rounds landed, and we found out 3 or 4 days later, when we captured some people, that mortar team did get hit by the mortars, or by the artillery mission. So,
can you just, you say you called in?
On this radio I'm talking about, yeah. So these guys have the 26-pound battery, and there's a handset, and it was like 4, 5, 6 miles you could, yeah. So you call back to a liaison, and then they, yeah, communicate. And I could even talk to airplanes sometimes too. All right, this one's a little rough. One of the mornings we got up, we're moving, and we're still on Hastings, and we come to this river crossing. There's all kinds of beautiful flowers, but we're getting ready to cross, and it's like, wow, does it smell? What is going on here? So we get closer and closer, and the smell gets worse and worse. And when you get to the river, you walk through the river. So you're walking through the river. It smelled like shit, and it was really bad. And we got through the brush and all that, and there's bodies all over the place. And they're North Vietnamese soldiers in uniform, laid out, and they were not, you know, they weren't dragged off. They usually drag off their guys, but these guys were there because they couldn't get enough of them, and there were a lot of them. And the Marines were like really upset. And I ended up saying a prayer for one of these guys, and like for his family. And I thought about how they say, you know, pray for your enemy and all that. It's like, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know. So I'm not, it's just, I did it, you know, I just did that. It was something I always remember. So that's Sister Catherine. I met her in 2007, the first year I went back. So that picture of Sister Amy that we saw a long time ago at English Mass, I showed her that picture. She freaked out. She jumped out of her sandals. She's screaming. Sister Amy was her mentor. It was like, unbelievable. There, look at that picture. That is, talk about history. So that's Sister Catherine, the X. That's before I was there, 1963. So she is a postulate, and it's out in the same area. It's out where that Conga, not the Conga church, the one out in the countryside where Amy is, Sister Amy is. And all these kids are left behind by the French. So the French were gone in 54, 55, whatever. So these kids are all orphans, and some are Vietnamese orphans straight up because their parents, I'm sure, got killed in the war. But it's a definite connection between the French and now the Americans coming in.
Biracial? Were there a lot of...
Yeah, they were biracial, and they were totally discriminated against. The Vietnamese society would not accept the kids that were French or whatever, you know, anything. If they weren't straight Vietnamese, they definitely had problems. And that's why these nuns are saints. They did a hell of a job. That's one of my daughters, three of my grandsons, and my son-in-law took the picture. So you can see she's holding a bag. So in these communist countries, everything is oblique. You can't be direct. So she asked me to bring a computer in. So I got a computer from a doctor in Georgia, sent it to my house in Clarendon Hills. So I bring it, and so you go up and you say, hello, sister, how you doing? And we're talking like this, and I'm handing her the bag, okay? Because there's minders. There's people who watch guys like me, and guys like people like my daughter, maybe not the boys. But, so there's minders in the communist countries, and everything is slippery, okay? This is really a cool story. There's a Vietnamese store in Westmont, not far from where I lived in Clarendon Hills, and they asked me to bring some cell phones in one year. So I brought them in, and it was the year I went with them. First morning, we're down in the lobby waiting to get picked up by our tour guide. And somebody comes over and says, where's Mr. Gorman? You know, here. He said, this woman says, over at the counter said, you found her phone. And I'm thinking, I found her phone. I wonder what this guy, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That's right, it's up in my room. So my daughter's there with the kids, and it's like, okay, I'm leaving, and this woman comes over and starts, you know, not talking to him, sitting with him. I go upstairs, and it's like, yeah, these are the phones I was supposed to bring in. So I go down and I give them to her. So there's no way I found them. I got there at midnight, went to my hotel room. I didn't find anything. But it was clever. She says, she doesn't come in and say, hey, some guy's got some phones for me.
To avoid the minders, you're saying.
To avoid the minders, to avoid anybody, to keep it quiet. We were there on Christmas Day. So I went to Mass twice in Vietnam in Christmas, 65, and I got to do the first reading with my grandsons in church. So this is Courage, is my name for her. She's got her son, who's definitely got a problem. She doesn't look too healthy herself. She's got the crutch. She shows up, and there's always about 50 people waiting in line. She gets to go to the head of the line, and she goes past us, and every time she can say it, she says, thank the Americans for helping my baby. And you know why she's got a crutch? Because she has a withered leg. And she is like, it's amazing. So I saw her 3 different times, and I only cried 3 times. And I still cry thinking about her. So that is Courage. So there's a place up here we go to called Highland Pass, the boondocks. So she looks at me, and she's probably like 25, 30, says, what's your name? Or what your name? It's like, who cares what my name is? You know, I'm thinking, you know, what the heck? So I said, I'm going to have some fun with this. My name, Trump. And that got her attention. So she looks at me, she said, you know Trump. but she knew who Trump was. And she is 9,000 miles from here. And she's in the boondocks. She's not in Saigon. That's the little girl, Juan. So she's come a long way. The little girl with the shoebox. And there's Took. So her mother is the umbrella. So we're going down in the cable car. And when I was in the fort, it was like a mythical place. Yeah, there's this mountain up here, down out there, and you can see it. And the VC are all over the place, and they hide in the forest, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going down in the cable car, and we can see the monkeys frolicking on the treetops. It's the rainforest, and you can see through there, and she goes, many VC, So she's pointing down there, and we knew the VC were down there. Then she takes the umbrella, puts it up, it's her fantasy rifle, bang, bang, she goes, me VC. So she was in the Viet Cong. As a teenager, she was probably 17 or 18. Yeah. And she's my friend. I include her on stuff. That was the first time she's been up on top of Bana Mountain. So we're friends. So I got up and went over and I gave her a big hug. Because, but it's like, you're too old, too young to be VC. So this is one hell of a nice place now. And there's tourists. It's tourism for the Vietnamese more than anybody. But now, outsiders coming. That is fantastic. That's brand new. And I saw them building that when I was there in March of 18. And I got that on my on a website, or when I was looking at my computer, you know, months later, where they finally finished it. You could see them doing it. So this is called the Golden Bridge. All right, there you go. Does anybody know what a hippie is? So when I went back in 07, I went up to Hue. So I showed you Hue, and that's the imperial capital, and that's where the Citadel is. So there's a bar called the DMZ Cafe. So it's for the demilitarized zone. And there's graffiti all over the wall. And that was one of the photos that I took. I said, I gotta take this picture. This is fantastic. So the DMZ Cafe, never trust a hippie. We had a 50th reunion for that attack on our position on 18 April. So we had a minister and we did a service, and that's the Vietnam Wall for you guys that haven't seen that. It's worth going to, the Vietnam Wall. It's back in Angkor Wat with the boys. So you'll notice you feed the elephants before you ride them. And then they're your friends. And the elephant's smiling and the boys are smiling. Yeah, that's me with my two friends. Peace be with you. So this was fun. Thanks a lot. Hope you guys learned something.